Revenge with Karen.
"Ma'am, are you the janitor?" That's what the new VP asked me the first time he saw me. I was on my knees under the server rack, patching in a replacement switch with one hand, holding a flashlight in my mouth, and balancing a thermal cup of coffee on the corner of a UPS battery. Sweat down my back, hair in a messy clip, wedding band long since removed. My name was on every architectural diagram in that building, but to him, it was just another middle-aged woman in slacks. A ghost with a badge. I didn't even flinch. Just handed him the fiber snip and said, "Nope, I mop up outages." He laughed, one of those too loud, echoing laughs that tries to establish dominance in a room full of people who already know you're a jackass. That was month 1. Back when I still gave a damn. Let me back up. I'm Lana, 48. Been at the company since dial-up was a thing. Started when we had 2 racks and an air conditioner that wheezed like a chain-smoking uncle. I built the backbone of our cloud infrastructure before cloud was anything more than a whiteboard doodle some MBA drew in a meeting to sound edgy. No one noticed me when things worked. That's the thing about infrastructure. You're only remembered when it fails. And mine never did. For 2 decades, I was the silent spine of that company, one who stayed late to write real documentation instead of just copying JIRA tickets and pretending that counted. The one who trained the hotshot Stanford grads and watched them all leave for shinier logos and bigger signing bonuses. I stayed, not because I was a martyr, not because I lacked options. I stayed because I knew where the wires ran, who the real linchpins were, and how quickly trust turns into a scapegoat when the lights go out. Over time, it became part of the furniture. Reliable, quiet, forgettable. I never joined the Slack gossip. I skipped the ugly sweater contests. I didn't post dog pictures or ask for pronouns in my bio. I was polite. I did my job. I made sure things didn't burn down. Then came the reorg. New CEO, new CMO, and then him, the new VP of engineering, straight from a failed crypto startup and still wearing the cologne of entitlement. Gavin was his real name. I called him the fog machine because he made every room worse by entering it. He moved in fast, fired 3 back-end devs in a week, merged departments without talking to anyone who actually touched code, hired his old roommate to modernize the stack. They started calling legacy systems technical debt before they even read the infrastructure maps. You know what they called me? Miss Lana. Like I was the substitute teacher covering study hall, but I still kept the wheels turning. I documented every change. I kept 2 copies, one on the internal wiki, one in my personal vault. I trained the new hires even when they rolled their eyes and said, "We're moving to serverless, so this'll be gone in 6 months anyway." Sure, kid. Just don't unplug the legacy auth bridge or the payroll won't process. I knew I was on borrowed time. I wasn't naive. They stopped inviting me to strategy meetings. CTO used to nod at me in the hallway. Now he didn't even make eye contact. The fog machine took credit for platform migration I'd spent 8 months designing. I didn't protest. I watched. I took notes. And then there was the dongle. Back in 2011, before we migrated to the cloud, I pushed hard for secure root access protocols, hardware-based tokens, not passwords. Nobody cared. We got burned by a rogue contractor, and suddenly everyone listened. I created a vault-based, single-point root access system. 1 encrypted USB token, 1 credential set, tamper-proof, air-gapped, rotated quarterly, never cloned. Only 1 person ever held the master dongle, me. It lived in my desk drawer, locked behind 2-factor security and a little yellow post-it. Break glass only if you read the documentation. It was a joke. Kind of. 'Cause the documentation. It was 96 pages of diagrams, step-by-steps, fail-safes, handoffs, and rollback contingencies. It took me 2 months to write and 6 years to update properly. I submitted it for review every quarter. I attached it to my compliance reports. I even walked the junior engineer through it once. He yawned halfway through and said, "So basically, you just plug it in." I wanted to scream. Instead, handed him the physical copy and said, "Someday, you'll thank me." He left 3 weeks later for Amazon. The layoffs came in waves. I survived everyone, not because I was protected, but because nobody else wanted to touch the old systems, and I made damn sure they were just complex enough to be scary, but not so broken that someone would demand a full rebuild. Call it job security. Call it survival in a world where loyalty was repaid with swag hoodies and a pat on the head. By the time year 20 rolled around, I was tired. Tired of watching incompetence climb the ladder while experience got written off as expensive legacy. Tired of being called resourceful instead of critical. Tired of Gavin leaning over my shoulder with his vape breath asking, "So what do you even do here?" But I stayed. One more quarter. One more patch cycle. One more 2 a.m. pager alert when a cron job silently failed, and I was the only one who knew where it lived. Until the day I found my name missing from the project roadmap. No notice. No call, just gone. That night, I poured a whiskey, opened my secure vault, pulled out the dongle, held it in my hand for a long, long time. And I wrote 2 words on a sticky note, just below the original. "You had your chance." "Do you even know what Kubernetes is, Lana?" That's what Gavin asked me. In the middle of an all-hands, on a Tuesday, with the entire engineering org watching like kids at a playground fight, holding their breath to see if the old lady would bite back or roll over. I was walking him through our container orchestration failover strategy. His idea, mind you, not mine. He wanted to sunset legacy ops in favor of cloud-native dev ops velocity. I translated that nonsense into actual system changes. Had a slide up about resource pooling across nodes. That's when he cut me off. And the smirk, Jesus, that little smug twist in his mouth like he'd caught me copying answers in algebra. Now here's the part Gavin never got. Yeah, I know what Kubernetes is. I've been using it since he was still selling jewels in college dorm rooms. I've deployed clusters before he knew how to spell YAML. Hell, it was elbow deep in Kubeatum configs while he was still posting Medium blogs about failing forward. But I didn't argue. I didn't clap back with credentials. I let the silence settle like dust. "I'll take it from here," he said, clicking the slide remote like it made him God. That was the last time I ever prepared a deck for him. The week after, the shuffling began. Restructuring, they called it. More like a bloodletting in slow motion. Anyone over 45 got reevaluated for alignment. Translation, pushed to the edges, given nonsense titles like Legacy Systems Liaison, told to train their replacements and act grateful for the chance. I kept a list. Cheryl from backend support gone. Omar, our storage guru, shoved into transition leadership. And Barbara, who'd built our initial API layer by hand during the series of days, reassigned to internal documentation enhancement, which meant sitting in a glass room writing tooltips for drop-down menus. Then came the invite. Meeting, role realignment, Lana R. No agenda, no context. Just Gavin and HR in a conference room with the blinds drawn. "Lana," Gavin began like he was my dentist about to say something nice and painful. "You've been here a long time." I nodded. "No shit. And we value that history. That stability. But moving forward, need to make sure that legacy knowledge is translated into something scalable and empowering." Ah, there it was, the word, empowering. "So, effective next week," he continued, glancing at HR like he wanted a gold star. "We're moving you to our new intern onboarding initiative. You'll be helping shape the next generation." He said it like I was being knighted, not demoted. I blinked. "So I'm not on the infrastructure refresh anymore." "No," he said. I'd asked if I could borrow his socks. "That's being handled by our new director of platform innovation." "You mean Kyle? The guy who thought DNS propagated faster if you hit refresh?" I didn't say that. I just nodded again, slow and deliberate. "Understood." HR smiled with her whole mouth and none of her eyes. Gavin tapped the table twice like I was a loyal Labrador. I walked out with my badge still warm around my neck and my spine on fire. Something snapped that day, not loud, not obvious, just a tiny hairline fracture down the middle of my loyalty. 20 years and I'd been demoted to camp counselor for Gen Z coders who didn't know what a kernel panic was. That night, I started copying files. Not company secrets, not sabotage, just the truth. Logs, config backups, DNS maps, load balancer failover trees, real infrastructure knowledge that nobody wanted, but everybody needed once things hit the fan. I backed it all up twice, printed a physical copy of the override protocol, and sealed it in an envelope marked in case of idiots. Filed it under L in my home filing cabinet. I also reopened my personal audit log. It wasn't flashy, just a spreadsheet. Timestamps, decisions, who said what, when I warned them, and when they didn't listen. Been keeping it on and off since 2017, back when a CFO tried to save money by hosting production in a staging instance. Nearly cost us $2 million. I never showed the log to anyone, just kept it in the drawer, my little insurance policy. Now I was writing in it every day. 2023 to 06 to 12, reassigned to intern onboarding. VP claims empowerment rationale. No technical rationale provided. No transition plan established for systems under current stewardship. 2023 to 06 to 13 intern deleted staging branch during demo. Gavin laughed. 2023 to 06 to 14 no documentation requests received. Uploaded new protocols to internal share. No views logged. 2023 to 06 to 15 quiet day. Legacy container failed. Fixed silently. No thank you. Every entry tightened my grip on the thing I'd been slowly realizing. They weren't going to fire me. That was too risky. I was still the lone steward of the old backbone. But they were going to wait me out, humiliate me, squeeze me into early retirement. Hope I'd disappear without leaving a mess. Too bad for them, I don't disappear. I just get quiet. One night, around 1:47 a.m., I sat alone in the server room after a silent update cycle, lights humming blue like an aquarium. I opened my drawer, looked at the dongle, still there, still pristine, still the key to everything they thought they owned. I closed the drawer, locked it, wrote a new sticky note. Congrats, Gavin, you woke up the archive. I handed in my resignation on a Thursday. No drama, no tears, no loud emails or Slack posts with crying emojis and inside jokes about how I'll miss the coffee machine. Just a plain envelope slid across Gavin's glass desk, with the subject line typed in bold. Formal notice of resignation effective 2 weeks. He didn't even read it. Just leaned back in his faux leather chair, laced his fingers behind his head like a smug little boy who just got away with shoplifting, and grinned. Oh, come on, Lana, he said, voice syrupy with fake concern. You're really gonna quit? You think anyone hires women your age anymore? I mean, unless you're going into consulting for rotary phones. He chuckled at his own joke, then glanced toward the window like that sealed the conversation. I didn't blink. I didn't look away. I just let the silence soak through the carpet like a spilled drink. You'll need to talk to HR, I said flatly. Exit protocol begins today. I've already logged my documentation. He waved a hand. Yeah, just email Belinda. She's got the template or whatever. Just make sure you return your laptop. And don't forget the security badge. I stood. And the dongle? He paused. What dongle? Of course he didn't know. No worries, I said. I'll take care of it. He was already staring at his phone. I walked out without another word. The next 48 hours were mechanical. I had a list. I followed it. Archive home directory. Print compliance handoff receipts. Clear cached logins. Schedule final ticket audit. Backup personal files. Shred sticky notes. Burn the trash with fire if possible. And then the vault. Our secure storage room was 2 floors below the cafeteria, in a hallway no one ever used except me and facilities. The key code was printed on exactly 2 pieces of paper in the building, and one of them lived in my desk drawer. I opened the safe with shaking hands, not from fear, but something colder, something like finality. Inside was the dongle, black casing. No logo, no markings, just a plain piece of metal and plastic, with a biometric pad worn smooth from years of use. Wrapped in a Faraday sleeve, next to the envelope, I'd sealed 3 years ago, marked in case of catastrophic access failure, read first. I took them both. When I emerged from the vault, the hallway was empty. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead like a broken pulse. My cardboard box sat on the ground beside my feet, half full of ancient notebooks, cactus with a single shriveled arm, a bobblehead of Dana Scully from my daughter, and now, the dongle tucked beneath a stack of neatly printed infrastructure maps. No one stopped me. No one noticed, just like they hadn't for the last 20 years. I walked past the engineering bullpen. The interns didn't even look up. One was tick-toking a coffee review. Another was asking ChatGPT how to write a SQL join. God help us all. Then I saw him. CTO? He was walking in from the elevator, tapping away at a tablet, probably reviewing a budget request for another pointless dashboard redesign. His eyes brushed mine for half a second, just enough to register I was holding a box, but not enough to recognize what that box meant. He didn't stop, didn't ask what was in it, didn't say goodbye, just kept walking. I moved toward the exit. The badge reader blinked red, then green. One last time. Glass doors slid open with a sound like a sigh. Downstairs, HR didn't look up when I handed in my badge. Belinda just pushed a form toward me. Exit interview? No thank you, she shrugged. Suit yourself, no party, no card. No sheet cake in the break room with a miswritten name and an off-brand balloon tied to the chair. No speech. No Slack thread full of I'll misuse from people who never remembered my name. Just me. A cardboard box. The weight of a company built on my silence. I got in my car and placed the box in the passenger seat. Sat there a moment, stared out at the gray sky and the puddle forming beneath the front tire. I didn't cry. I didn't feel rage, just a strange sort of stillness. They thought I was leaving empty-handed, but what I carried wasn't revenge. It was order, the kind that kept their digital world from collapsing in on itself. And the funny thing, I'd offered to teach them. They didn't listen, so now I was simply gone. My final week felt like haunting a house that had already been sold. I showed up each morning like clockwork. 8 a.m., black coffee in a dented thermos, cardigan slung over my chair like it might still matter. Logged in, checked tickets, updated logs, sat in near silence while the engineering floor buzzed around me like I didn't exist. Gavin didn't speak to me once. Not even a how's it going, or a fake nice, hope your last week's going great. He walked past my desk 5 separate times. Once he actually stopped to ask if someone had seen Kyle, completely ignoring that Kyle had taken my desk and my title 2 days ago. The only official interaction came in the form of an auto-generated Slack message from the help desk. Ticket #82109 transfer knowledge base to Kyle D. High priority, no attached questions. Oh, follow up. Just an order tossed over the fence, so I followed it. I built the cleanest damn knowledge base this company had seen since its founding. Internal system maps, backup strategies, downtime mitigation logs, every undocumented fix I'd pulled out of thin air at 3 a.m. over the last decade. The real living knowledge, the kind you never find in SharePoint, but you sure as hell need when a load balancer chokes in Q4. I sent it to Kyle. No reply. Next day, I pinged him again. Hey, just checking if you had a chance to review the docs. Happy to walk you through anything. Nothing. On Wednesday, I tried in person. Stopped by his desk while he was on YouTube watching some guy eat Carolina Reapers. Hey Kyle, I said, lightly tapping the cube wall, wanted to make sure you had access to the credentials doc. There's a section on the patch rotation you'll need to double-check next month. Looked up like I'd interrupted his baptism. Blinking. Oh, yeah, I think I saw that. I'll get to it. He didn't. Thursday morning, I found out just how little he'd gotten to it. I opened the internal file directory to finalize my logs and found one of my folders missing. The root directory labeled Auth Override 2015 archive was gone. Nuked. No backup in the recent queue. I called IT. Oh yeah, the intern says, chewing gum like he's in a damn sitcom. I think I deleted that. Looked like old junk. Was eating up a ton of space on the shared drive. That folder contained the deprecated, but still linked, override instructions for a backend credential sync that ran every 90 days. It wasn't junk. It was a map to a minefield. I stared at the phone in my hand like it had personally betrayed me. It wasn't junk, I said, voice low. It was a part of our Tier 1 access control system. Oops, he said. Guess it's gone now. I didn't yell. I didn't even sigh. I just hung up and opened my personal archive drive. Luckily, I had printed it. Bound in a manila folder labeled Let Them Burn, my little joke, one no one ever heard but me. That afternoon, I composed a scheduled email. Addressed it to the company's legal department, CC'd my personal counsel, included 3 attachments, my signed exit checklist, the full credential return form, a notarized copy of my final offboarding documentation log, timestamped, indexed, and aligned to ISO standards. The subject line read, Final compliance submission per policy 12.4.9 delivery scheduled, Friday, 5:05 p.m. The moment I walked out the door. By Friday morning, even HR had stopped pretending I was worth a hallway nod. I packed the rest of my things, 2 framed certifications, 1 broken mouse, a stapler no one else liked because it jammed, and set the cardboard box beside my desk. I wore slacks and a nice blouse that day. No one noticed. At lunch, they threw a goodbye cake for Kyle's roommate, who'd worked there for 9 months. Chocolate, balloons. Somebody sang. They posted a group photo on Slack, tagged everyone but me. When 5 o'clock hit, I shut down my machine, held the power button longer than necessary, made sure every trace of my login history was scrubbed from the user session. As I reached for the cardboard box, I noticed a new sticky note fluttering slightly in the desk draft, the one I'd written months ago. Break glass only if you read the documentation. I smiled, then picked it up and dropped it in the trash. 3 weeks after I left, was deadheading roses when the panic started. Snips in hand, sun on my shoulders, birds arguing over the birdbath like they were negotiating a union contract. I was at peace. My hand smelled like damp soil and crushed mint. My phone was inside on silent. No Slack dings, no Jira pings, no 2 a.m. urgent calls because some intern mistook staging for prod. I had reached that beautiful stage of detachment where you forget the rhythm of office lighting. Meanwhile, back at the office, they were melting. It started innocuously enough. A DevOps ticket flagged by Jenkins. Credential rotation failed on 3 staging environments. The automation pipeline hiccuped. No one cared at first. Kyle kicked the ticket to support with a shrug and a probably just a timeout. Then production failed. And then the update jobs. The nightly deployments stopped pushing. Automated tests didn't trigger. API refresh cycles timed out. New intern tried to fix it by restarting the container. He took down the billing gateway instead. The CTO got the first real clue from an error string that hadn't been seen in 5 years. Error. Root credential container unavailable token verification expired. That's when the bleeding started. C, the company's quarterly credential rotation protocol was automated, but only to a point. Root tokens that allowed the rest of the system to validate and update were stored inside a hardware-encrypted container. That container was only accessible via one key, the USB dongle, the one I returned in a box with no ceremony, the one Gavin never noticed, the one they never cloned. Kyle, apparently, had opened the box, seen a random old flash drive, and tossed it into a drawer with expired ID cards and leftover conference lanyards. Because of course he did. Because nothing labeled core credential access token do not duplicate could possibly be important. The compliance audit email hit at 9:41 a.m. An automated ping from our third-party cloud vendor. Credential rotation incomplete. Compliance out of alignment with policy 19.2.4. Please confirm remediation steps. That email goes directly to legal. And the CTO. 10 minutes later, Gavin was screaming into a Zoom call loud enough that an intern in the break room could hear him through a closed door. "This is your fault," he reportedly yelled at Kyle. "Why the hell didn't you follow up on her docs?" Kyle stammered something about they were really long, and I thought we had the backup key. They didn't. I'd made sure of that. You don't give out root access to people who treat systems like IKEA furniture. By 1 p.m., the CTO had joined the chaos. Dev team couldn't push to production. CI/CD was jammed. Customer support was getting calls about invoices not processing. One of our major clients, some crypto-something darling Gavin loved to brag about, missed a payout window due to a failed webhook. Legal started digging. They searched my handoff docs, and to their credit, they found them. Every single one. Properly formatted, signed, timestamped, uploaded to the legal archive directory, with read receipts enabled. The CTO read it 3 times. The process was crystal clear. Root credential container requires physical key for access. Token validity expires after 90 days. Cloning prohibited per policy 11.5.1. And then the real kicker, in bold. Final dongle returned 2023 to 06-16 per signed offboarding protocol. Responsibility for credential access transfer lies with receiving team per policy 4.7.2. That was the moment someone in legal reportedly said, "Wait, does anyone know where the dongle is?" Crickets. No one had checked. The intern who deleted my archive folder swore he hadn't touched any hardware. Kyle blamed me. Her documentation was just really dense, okay, Gavin? He did what all cornered cowards do. He blamed the interns, stormed into the bullpen and demanded, in front of the entire floor, who the hell didn't do their job. One of the interns, bless his heart, said, "Isn't that your job?" Legend says Gavin's eye twitched so hard his Bluetooth earpiece fell out. They turned the place upside down looking for the dongle, rifled through drawers, searched backup drives, tore into the server room like it was a hostage situation. Nothing, because I hadn't just handed it over. I'd buried it physically, inside that cardboard box, underneath a stack of manila folders, so boring no one would ever open them unless they were desperate or terminally curious. Turns out, neither trait was common in that office. By the end of the day, the panic was escalating. The CTO issued a red-level incident ticket. Gavin tried to schedule a hotfix deployment with temporary credentials, but they'd expired too. The failsafe I'd built in, which Gavin had called over-engineering in a meeting, had triggered silently. No new tokens, no override, no access, and I was pruning a basil plant, thinking about whether I should make a tomato tart for dinner or finally open the bottle of wine my sister sent me last Christmas. I didn't check my phone, didn't read the emails starting to pile up. They weren't my problem anymore. Not my system, not my circus, not my damn dongle. First cracks in their recovery plan appeared within the hour. By noon the next day, the CTO had assembled a war room. Ops, DevSec, IT, legal, even Gavin, sweating through his performance polo, chugging sugar-free Red Bull like hydration could solve incompetence. They whiteboarded solutions, rebooted pipelines, tried to force the rotation cycle with a root override command. That's when the real panic hit. The override didn't work. The CTO, man who once told me we have redundancy for a reason, stood frozen as his own terminal spat out the sentence that would haunt him. Override protocol deprecated failsafe active. Token access required. Contact primary custodian. They stared at it like it was written in hieroglyphics. What no one had remembered or cared to remember was that I had deprecated the override 2 years ago, after a contractor used a stale token to overwrite our sandbox cluster. I'd held a meeting about it, sent a memo, logged it in the compliance tracker, even had legal sign-off. Policy 11.5.1, Section D, Line 12. In the event of credential override, token authorization must originate from primary custodian with active authorization. No digital bypass shall be available. At the time, they'd all nodded and muttered makes sense, promptly buried it under another dozen Slack channels labeled things like #innovation_huddle and #Q3wins. Now they were locked out of their own kingdom, standing at the drawbridge without a key, pounding on gates they themselves had rusted shut. Legal did what legal always does, pulled receipts. And oh, did they find them. Every exit doc signed, dongle return form timestamped, credential authority transfer offered and ignored. Documentation links, archived, views, 0. An associate from legal reportedly said she did everything by the book. You just never opened the damn book. Meanwhile, across the ocean, I was sitting at a cafe in Porto. Cloudy day, breeze from the river. My phone buzzed once, an email titled Credential Emergency Assistance Request. I didn't open it. Instead, I sipped my espresso and watched a little dog in a raincoat chase pigeons. My laptop sat closed. Dongle was back in its Faraday sleeve, tucked in the bottom of my suitcase. Safe, silent, untouched. I'd built the fortress. They lost the keys. Back at HQ, the CTO finally stopped yelling long enough to really read the documentation I'd left behind. I imagine his face as he got to the line about the failsafe. In absence of token activity for 21 days, container locks down. Manual reset requires token physical presence. Silence must have been thick. That's when Gavin, sensing the smell of his own career roasting, blurted out, "Can't we just call her?" I mean, it's not like she meant for this to happen. That sentence alone nearly sparked a mutiny. Because here's the thing, it was his job to make sure that token was cloned, to read the documentation, to assign credential custody, to replace the systems he was so eager to erase. But he didn't. He wanted the empire without the architecture, wanted the power without the plumbing. Thought pushing me out would erase the need to understand what I had kept alive. The CTO reportedly whispered, "The dongle was never cloned." Gavin froze. "Wait, never? You mean never?" Someone in the room said it out loud. "We never replaced her. We just deleted her." At that moment, reality finally settled in. Not just that they couldn't fix it, but that I hadn't broken anything. I'd simply followed protocol, documented every step, filed everything, sent reminders, confirmed sign-offs. I even CC'd legal, HR, and Gavin's own assistant. And yet, no one had listened. No one had replied. No one had ever asked. I didn't sabotage them. I didn't hold anything ransom. I didn't set a single trap. They just assumed I didn't matter. Until the entire system bent around my absence like a rusted spine, collapsing in on itself. By nightfall, CTO's assistant had reached out 3 times. A voicemail, 2 emails, 1 flagged urgent. I let them sit. And as I watched the rain begin to fall gently on the river, I thought I used to be the one they called when the world was burning. Now they'd have to learn to put out their own fires or let it all burn down. My phone rang at 6:02 a.m., Portuguese time. Unknown number, U.S. area code. I didn't answer. It rang again. Same number. This time, I let it go to voicemail. Third call came in from a blocked number, straight to voicemail again. A minute later, a new email slid into my inbox. Subject, urgent, Credential access request for assistance from Ashley M., Associate General Counsel. I opened it. Hi Lana, hope you're doing well. We'd like to schedule a quick call to discuss some questions about the infrastructure credential architecture you managed prior to your departure. Specifically, looking for clarity on the token protocol and any potential access remediation steps you might recommend. Appreciate your time and hope to connect soon. No apology, no accountability, just a sanitized olive branch dipped in legalese. I closed the email. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text. Lana, it's Ashley. Can we talk for 5 minutes? Gavin's escalating things. CTO is in with legal. Please. I stared at the message while sipping black coffee from a chipped ceramic mug. A cat wandered across the sidewalk beside me, tail twitching like a metronome. The morning sun filtered through an awning, casting long, gold bars across my table. I typed exactly 4 words and hit send. Refer to my exit protocol. That was it. Because I had already answered their questions, every single one of them, in writing, filed properly, timestamped, and ignored. I wasn't going to hold a Zoom therapy session to walk them through documents they'd treated like spam. By mid-afternoon, I checked my email again. There were now 7 unread messages from legal, and 1 from the CTO himself. His subject line, critical, need help with token authorization underneath, a single line, please, it's locked. The failsafe triggered. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because I could picture his face. Pale, sweaty, looking at a screen that refused to move, while the system he once called bulletproof coughed up dust. So I opened my old sent folder. Searched for the email I'd scheduled the day I walked out. The one titled, Final Compliance Submission per Policy 12.4.9 found it, and hit forward. This time, I added 2 new recipients, the chairman of the board and the investor liaison Gavin used to name drop at conferences like she was his best friend. Subject line stayed the same. Body unchanged, except for 1 small addition. A footnote in italics at the bottom of the email. Please note, per Section 9 of the Infrastructure Protocol, a dormant credential state beyond 21 days triggers a non-reversible lockout cascade. This was approved in Q1 2022 as a critical security enhancement. Recovery instructions were provided during handoff. Access now requires verified token presence. Best of luck. I hovered over the send button for a long second, then clicked. Back in Lisbon, the wind picked up. A church bell chimed somewhere down the hill. I leaned back in my chair and let the sun warm my face. At HQ, the VP was unraveling. I'd heard, through whispers, forwarded screenshots, one former colleague who still had my number, that Gavin had spent the last 2 days on back-to-back damage control calls. That the board was now asking why the credential access system relied on a single token. That the CTO had already thrown him under the bus, claiming he'd delegated responsibility. Delegated it to me, the woman he dismissed with a smirk and a casual jab about my age. Now he was pacing conference rooms, calling interns into emergency meetings, snapping at IT leads like it would make a dongle magically appear. Spoiler, it wouldn't, because the only thing they'd cloned was arrogance, and that can't open a vault. At 10:17 a.m. Eastern, on a Tuesday meant for smooth investor demos and easy quarterly wins, the failsafe activated. A multimillion-dollar client, one Gavin had boasted about onboarding personally, was midway through a live product showcase with their own board when their cloud-hosted instance blinked out like a dying star. First, the dashboards froze. Then, the API calls failed. The front end, custom-built, expensive, tailored, threw a 503 error across a 16-foot presentation screen. A single line appeared, System unavailable, credential authorization failure. Contact your administrator. Problem was, there was no administrator left to contact. Calls flew. The client's CTO rang hours. No answer. Left a voicemail that reportedly ended with, if we lose this deal, you're on the hook for 7 figures. Support lines jammed. Kend engineers tried brute forcing access to the credential container. Scripts failed. Every workaround stalled at the same wall. Token required authorization expired, failsafe protocol lock active within 30 minutes. 3 separate investors had called an emergency session. Not a casual, we'd like an update check-in. A full-blown boardroom summoning. Suits in chairs. Laptops open. Lawyers present. At 11:42 a.m., CTO entered the glass conference room holding exactly one thing, a printed email, my email. He placed it on the table in front of the board chair without saying a word. Just slid it forward like a warrant. The chairman read silently. So did the others. Gavin, already seated, already sweating, tried to fill the silence with a breathy, okay look. There's been some confusion around roles and responsibilities here, and I think if we all just stop. It came from the chair, who signed off on credential transition planning. Gavin glanced around. We had discussions. There were drafts. Kyle was reviewing options. Lana left early, so we didn't. Did you sign the offboarding documents? Not personally, but did you read the documentation she submitted? Silence. The chair picked up the paper. Read aloud from the footnote. Access now requires verified token presence. Best of luck. Someone chuckled. Not kindly. That's when legal spoke. Calm, lethal. We've reviewed all policy trails. Miss Rivera followed protocol to the letter. Documentation was submitted. Credential custody was offered. The token was returned as per policy and marked as not to be cloned, also per security guidelines signed by this very board 2 years ago. Pause. There was no sabotage, she said. Just neglect, a beat past. Where is the token now? The chair asked. We believe it may have been discarded, CTO muttered, or possibly misplaced. By whom? All eyes turned to Gavin. His lips moved, but no sound came out. The chair leaned back, tapped his pen on the table. Step outside, please. Gavin hesitated, then stood. No folder, no laptop. Just shame trailing behind him like toilet paper stuck to a shoe. The door closed behind him with a soft click, and just like that, he was gone. From my seat at a quiet bar in Lisbon, I watched the corporate Slack thread explode. Someone leaked a screenshot of the board meeting. The photo was blurry, but you could make out one thing clearly, my name in bold on the printed email. They tried to control the narrative, sent out a sanitized company-wide message. We're experiencing some temporary access challenges due to credential handoff inconsistencies. Rest assured, we're actively pursuing a resolution with our security partners. Security partners. It was the partner. Now I was sipping Vinho Verde and reading headlines on tech blogs calling it the dongle debacle. One even called me the last admin. I bookmarked it. The CTO sent a final email later that night. Lana, on behalf of the company, I'd like to sincerely apologize. We now understand the importance of what you built and what we failed to respect. If you're open to a conversation, we'd very much like to discuss potential consulting support. I stared at the message for a long while, then clicked compose and started to type. The boardroom was silent, one of those thick silences where even a cough feels like a bomb going off. Gavin was already gone, banished with nothing more than a polite step outside, which in corporate speak meant, don't bother coming back for your mug. Now the board turned to the CTO. One director, older woman with perfect posture and a pen that had clicked 12 times since the meeting began, leaned forward. Walk us through exactly who approved removing Miss Rivera without a formal transition plan. The CTO opened his mouth, closed it. The chair spoke next. Calm, surgical. She maintained critical infrastructure for over a decade. The credential access protocol listed her as the sole custodian, and you allowed her to leave with no redundancy in place, no replacement, no clone, no plan, silence. The CTO's voice when it came was low, tired, more honest than anyone had heard him in years. She told us, he said. She warned us. We didn't listen. The director set down her pen. That was the end of it, not just of the meeting, but of the illusion that the people running the show had ever understood who actually held the keys to the kingdom. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, I was on a stone balcony overlooking the Douro River, espresso in one hand, almond pastry in the other, sun kissing the tiles underfoot like even the weather wanted me to feel seen. I was wearing the same sweater I'd had on my last day at the office. Only now, it wasn't workplace armor, it was comfort. My phone buzzed. From CTO subject, Consulting Inquiry Lana, following today's board session. I'd like to formally inquire whether you'd be open to returning on a limited consulting basis. You would have full autonomy to work remotely, and we're prepared to offer a premium rate. Please advise availability. Timing is urgent. I smiled, not smug, not angry, just full, finally. I set the coffee down, typed slowly, deliberately. Subject Consulting Inquiry message. My rate just doubled. Kind regards, Lana Rivera. I hit send, and I opened LinkedIn. My profile hadn't been updated in months. Last entry, Senior Systems Engineer, 2003-2023. I clicked Add New Post, typed one line, No hashtags, no photos, just truth. Turns out some legacy systems are irreplaceable. I clicked post, then closed the laptop. And let the sun do what it does best, keep shining, whether people notice or not. You're the real stars of the corporate jungle. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe, or I'll flick the switch on your old cubicle memories.